You are live, Janie.
Yep. Okay, so do you want to pop over for a minute so that they can see me? I'm going to do a little introduction here, Amy.
You are on.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my screen and not your screen. I'm sorry, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Facebook Live today. I'm Janie Lantz, and I am an educator with SVP Worldwide. And my specialty, as many of you know, is the embroidery software. And today we're starting one of a 3-day series on embroidery design, artwork to embroidery designs. And today's topic is on drawn paint and making precise artwork for using in the Express Design Wizard. And I want to first introduce to you who is in the background and who is helping and working with me. Amy and Meredith are both here today, so you can give them a quick hello and a wave. And then I want to remind you guys that you don't want to click on outside links. So if we can't stop people from posting in the feed with their comments, but if you see an outside link to something that is not SVP or something requesting payment, please do not click on those links because our Facebook is always free. So today, what I'm going to do is show you how you can make better embroidery designs than this. So this is part of what I'm going to go through in tomorrow's Facebook Live. And if you can see this, you can see that this embroidery has a lot of stray stitches, it has rough edges, it has gaps. It's just not very pretty. So the reason that happens is because the artwork that we start with is not of high quality. And I'm targeting Express Design Wizard for my artwork because recently there have been some changes made to the software, and Express Design Wizard has been added to the silver subscription, and Drawn Paint has been added to silver, gold, and platinum subscription levels. And it's also my understanding that if you have box software and you purchase the box software upgrade, you have access to the Drawn Paint in silver and gold as well. So I'm going to start with a little overview, a little introduction of what the Drawn Paint window can do. So you want to flip us over to the software? Perfect. Thank you so much. Now, if you look at this Drawn Paint software, you'll see we have a set of tabs across the top, and we have what I call a control panel at the right-hand side. And each tab has its function. So if you look at the file tab has places to open or insert artwork. It has places to save or save as the artwork. Save and save as an ECQ file type, which is a vector graphic that can also hold paint image information. And that's probably a little more than what you need to know for today, but just be aware that as you're making graphics and you save them, it is a just default file type and it will function as a vector graphic. And we'll talk more about what a vector graphic and what a raster graphic is as we go through. So we also can export pictures from here. And again, I'll talk a bit more about that. You can set up preferences from here. When you're done working in the File tab, you can use the Go Back button, and this Go Back button takes you back to your main screen for Drawn Paint. We also have two tabs here, Draw and Paint. Now, a lot of graphics or image preparation programs only have Draw or they have Paint. They don't have both, and that's what most people are used to working with. So draw type images, I'm trying to think how to say this so that it will not confuse you. Draw type images are vector graphics, and they are made up of lines that are open or closed and fills. That's all you'll ever find in the Draw tab type images, which I call vector graphics. And the most common ones of those that we can work with are the ECQ that we make in our own draw and paint. And the other most familiar one would be SVG formats, which a lot of you have heard talked about when you go to digitizing classes, or maybe you have a memento and you can use SVG images to bring into that to design in the crafting software. So the Draw tab makes vector graphics. The Paint tab makes what we call raster graphics. And the thing you need to know about Paint is in Draw, when I make images, I'm using lines and fills. That's all I use. In Draw, each line or line and fill combination or fill will have an object in the film strip. So as we build our artwork, we're going to see those objects pop up in the film strip. And we can select those and manipulate them very easily. In the Paint tab, it's a raster image type, and that means it's made up of pixels. So pixels are little teeny tiny dots. And the easiest way that I've found to tell people what the difference is, the Draw tab is like you're cutting an image out of paper and putting it down on your artwork. In the Paint tab, you're taking a spray can and you're spraying, and it's going to splatter. It's going to have lots of little droplets, and it's going to be rough around the edges. So you can imagine that what we create in the Draw tab is going to be much smoother, much cleaner, much higher quality image. And that's going to go through the Express Design Wizard and make a much, much better embroidery. And tomorrow, if you attend tomorrow's, where I'm going through and showing how the Express Design Wizard works and what kind of things you can do with it, I'll actually have a couple more stitch outs of that little guy I showed you at the beginning that look very, very nice because I redrew him in the Draw tab. So we have a Draw tab and we have a Paint tab, and that kind of makes Draw and Paint unique compared to other artware designing programs that are out there on the market. You also have an Insert tab. An Insert has the capability of making things with shapes, with fonts, with a design gallery, which are images that have been pre-designed and saved into the software for you to use, and Insert File, and that's where we go to bring in third-party images or something I might have designed and saved, and I want to reopen and re-edit it, and we're going to use that in just a bit. We also have a tab called Multiply, and Multiply is really cool because I can take an object or a group of objects and I can multiply them. I can put them in a circle, I can tile them across, up and down, or a tile like this where you go both up and down, and I can control repeats and do all kinds of neat stuff too. And if we have time at the end, I'll actually do a quick overview of how the multiply works. Then we have a View tab. View tab is where you set the size of your canvas. And when you're in Draw and Paint, you don't work with a hoop area or a background, you work with canvas size. So think of it as I'm making artwork. I'm going to do this on a canvas like it was an oil painting, and I can set the size of that canvas. But when you're working with the Draw tab and objects in a vector graphic, it really doesn't matter how large or small you make them, because you can adjust them, make them bigger, smaller, skew them, change things up as many times as you want. And because it regenerates that image from a line and a fill, it's always going to keep its precision. So that's another advantage to drawing your own artwork using the Draw tab. And then we also have the ability to turn our grid off and on. For reference, you can start it at the center or the upper left-hand corner. You can set the size of the grid. So I've got mine set for metric. 25.4 millimeters is a perfect inch. Right now it's set for 2 inches, and that would be a large grid area like this. And then it's subdivided, and you can subdivide it a lot of different ways. You can have no subdivisions. I like to do 1 of 2 because those are 1/2 inch, or I can do 1 of 4 because those are 1/4 inch grids. So you can kind of get a feel for how those work. There's also ability here to show or hide the background. So when we actually get into making our little man, or our little puppet or whatever you want to call him, we're going to bring in a background, a bitmap image, a paint type image that has pixels embedded in the background, and then go to the draw tab and draw over it. And it's really nice sometimes to be able to make it brighter so you can see where to put your lines better, or to make your background dimmer so that you can see where the lines are. The other tool here that's really valuable is Get Length. And when you turn on Get Length, you get a little ruler. You click and drag from one point to another, and it tells you the precise size in millimeters and inches at the same time. So Get Length is a tool that can be very helpful when you're designing as well, and you need precision, or you're changing the size of something and you want it to be an exact width or height. And I'm just going to right click and turn off that Finish Get Length. So the other thing before we actually start drawing is, why would I want to take the time to take a picture and redraw it myself? And the answer to that lies in that embroidery that you saw. If I take a pixelated image and redraw it as lines and fills, and then I run it through the Express Design Wizard in the embroidery module or in the digitizing module, I'm going to get a far higher quality embroidery. And I can also control where the areas of colors of stitches go by how I draw my image. So being able to run an ECQ, which is my preferred first type, as it is the cleanest, or an SVG, which is also a very high quality draw or vector type graphic that we can export, those two will always give us the cleanest, most precise embroidery stitches that we can do with a quick wizard or assistant on the Mac side. So that is the reason why I have always felt that it is worth my time to redraw poor quality images. So let's go back here for a second to the Draw tab. And I talked to you a little bit about vector graphic images use lines and fills, and lines can be open or closed. If they're open, they're just a line. And if we close them, if we put the start end and the finish end together and join them, then it becomes closed and it can hold a fill color. So I just want to show you a little quick demo of what I'm talking about. If I go to my line tools and I change a line color to, let's change it to a dark blue, and then I can set the width of a line. So 0.1 is very, very skinny. 0.5 has worked quite well for me to make artwork that I want to run through Express Design and make a running stitch border, unless you're going to make it really, really huge. And then you might need to drop it down, because remember, as you make this bigger, the wizard or the assistant is actually going to multiply the size of that line. It's going to try to emphasize it more. But 0.5 has been a good starting point if you want a running stitch. A 2 millimeter is going to make a wider outline on the line, and it's going to tend to produce satin stitches if you run it through the Express Design. So as we go through, we can set that line width, but because we're working in the Draw tab and we're working with objects in the film strip, we can go back and select them afterwards. We can save one image with skinny lines so that we get running stitches from them, and we can edit it, make the lines wide, and save another image with fat lines so we get satin stitches. So it opens up a whole world of potential change and capability. And it's really great for people that have silver or gold and only have the Express Design, but do not have digitizing for edit and digitizing, because using this technique, you can manipulate your artwork to get the result you want in embroidery. So those tools are what we're going to be using when we go through and design our art. If I look at the paint tab here real quickly, in the paint tab, you can see the tools in the paint tab are different. They are more like using a paintbrush or using an ink pen or using a spray can. And they are going to just go directly on the canvas. There's no film strip here because you don't have objects. And the way you select and work with things in paint is quite different. And to me, actually more difficult to achieve precision with than when you're working in draw and you basically have lines and fills. So let's look at drawing in this vector tab. Amy, do we have any questions up to that point?
We have one question about the ruler and the getting the length. I think they're asking if you can use the grid to get the length that you need to see. I think that's what it says, based on screen size. I'm thinking the grid.
Sure. Yes, you could use the grid as well. That's why I set mine up to have 1/4-inch squares. Actually, these are 1/2-inch squares because I have a 2-inch grid set. But you can set your grid up so that you know exactly what size the larger square is and the subdivisions are, and you can use that as a guide. I use the ruler tool a lot when maybe I have made a bunny and I have an ear and I want to know how long it is diagonally across the grid. Then clicking and dragging that get length tool just gives you more precision in what exact size it is. Okay, so I'm going to go to the draw tab and show you these tools a little bit. So I've set up my line to be a navy blue and I've set it at a fairly narrow width. And then I'm going to make a fill color and I'm going to make it a light turquoisey shade. Now you can turn fill off or on. You can turn line off or on. So if you want to design something that's only a fill, all you have to do is click this little thing and it turns it off. But to turn it back on, you have to come and reselect the line color. So I think that's important for you guys to know. Also the same with the fill. If I turn it off, it won't make a fill in the area, but to turn it back on, the way to do it is reselect the same fill color. And then we have a set of tools that are for drawing. So these are my draw tools. This one is called a point draw. I use that probably 99.9% of the time. This one is a Bezier draw, and Bezier was added to our software several versions ago. Bezier works with points with handles, and the handles allow you to adjust the flatness or the curvature of the lines. If you're already familiar with, say, the Adobe program or with Corel Draw, they use Bezier tools in there, and that is available to you if you're already familiar with them. I'm going to use Point Draw today. This one is a freehand draw, and that is like if you're really good at drawing with a pencil, because you have to click and hold the mouse. You have to have a really steady hand. You can't release the mouse until the line is done, or you're going to have to go back and edit it. And there's a couple of other tools in here as well that as you advance into this, you can always go to the help system. And in the help system, when you click that link, it opens up a page in your internet browser. And mine is going over to, hold on just a second, guys. I have to drag this back to my main screen. So it opens up to a page in your web browser. And in the web browser, you can look up help topics for Draw and Paint. And it will go through different tutorials. Here it's showing you how to do the multiply tab, for example. And a lot of these have little tutorials incorporated into them. So you can play with those to your heart's content. And that's a great place, a secondary place to go. All right, so let me get back here to my demo. And I preset my line, my fill, my line width. I'm going to use the point draw. And if you've done some digitizing, these tools work very similarly. So I'm just going to click a few points and make a line. And you can see as I manipulate those points around, where I place them determines the curvature of the line. If I hold Shift and click, I can make square points, and square points define a straight line or a sharp corner angle. So it's pretty easy. If I made a round point and I want to turn it square, I can just cursor over it. You see how that cursor changes from place a point to a little X. I can hold shift and click and it goes from round to square. I can hold shift and click again and it goes back to round. When I have a line placed, all I have to do is right click and you have three choices: finish the line, finish and close the line, or finish point draw. Finish and close the line would close it. I want this one to be open so you can see what they look like. So I'm going to finish the line. And then my tool is still on. I'm going to come back here and just make a quick circle. This time I want to close the circle myself. So when I cursor close to the first point, do you see how it changes from a little dot to a smaller X? And that X means it's going to join. And as soon as I click my last point, it joins. And because I have both line and fill enabled, I now have a closed line with a fill in it. The last thing I want to show you is if you, because these are things I think you'll run into as you play, you think you've closed the line and you finish it and it's like, oh my gosh, now my line's open, what am I going to do? We have editing tools. So the editing tools, this one is edit points. And when you edit points, you can click and move the points. You can change them back and forth like I did just a minute ago in this line. But there is a tool here for joining, and it took me the longest time to figure this one out, but it's a really cool tool. Once you click joining on, the two ends in any line appear as little sort of targets, and you can click and grab and move them until you see that plus on your cursor, and now it's joined and it's closed. So that's kind of a basic large overview of how those tools work. So I am going to step you through how to embed an image in the paint background and create your own vector graphic over it in the Draw tab. So I'm going to go back to the File menu and I'm going to leave the little test I did still open and choose New Window. And if some of you have Mac software at home, I just want to point out to you that occasionally in Mac, the control panel looks a little bit different and some of the tools are in slightly different places. So you may have to hunt around for them, but they're all still there and you can do everything you're seeing today in either Windows or Mac software. So I opened a new window and I am going to go to Insert. And in Insert, I'm going to open the picture of that funny little guy that we're going to work with today and tomorrow. And I have stored him in a special folder. So here he is. He is a bitmap image. Now, bitmap is a paint type image. So he is made out of lots and lots and lots of little speckles of color. He's not lines and fills. And you saw what happened when I took him through the Express Design Wizard. So I specifically chose him because he is a gradient fill. The colors have been blended there to make it very shaded. These are not the types of image that work optimally in the Express Design Wizard. So I'm going to open him up and bring him in as a background in Paint. And Paint is kind of fussy. You have to have the image selected to be able to resize it. So it came in selected. I'm going to hold Control and Shift. I'm going to make this image larger, and I'm not doing it for my finished target size because I can easily adjust that any size, any shaping I want in the Draw tab once I've redrawn him. I'm doing it simply because it's easier to see on my computer screen. And then when I go to the Draw window, in the Draw window, you can see I have a film strip. Film strip will show me those objects as I place them, but right now the film strip is empty because I don't have an image in Draw. My image is in Paint. Draw is picking up the Paint image and showing it as a background. We call it embedding, so that I can use that as a reference point to draw over. So let's set up our line in my line color, I'm going to make it black because this little guy has black outlines. And I'm going to make him to start with a 0.5 millimeters because I want an embroidery design that instead of the icky sort of mixture of fills and satins and whatever that came out of the bitmap image when I ran it through Express Design, I want a nice constant running stitch. So I am going to pick a fill color, and I decided looking at him, I'm going to draw his left hand first and then his right hand because those are kind of tucking under the orange color for his body. Then I'm going to put the eye and the eye pupil over the top. And then just for fun, we might come in here and kind of put a center to his ear just to get a little more detail and a little contrast. And how much you want to break your image up, where you want to place the lines, where you want to put your areas of fill color, that's entirely up to you. I'm just going to show you today how the tools work, and then you can play around with using them to make all kinds of paint images, JPEGs, bitmaps, PNGs. I think it'll open Windows meta files. Anything that can be opened into the Paint tab, you can redraw in the Draw tab just by drawing over the top. Okay, so I'm going to change my fill color to that lime green that kind of matches his hand. And you can change these afterwards. You decide you don't like something. Once you get this in the Draw tab and you've saved it, you can open it up, you can redo it, you can change it up pretty much any way you want. Then I'm going to start by drawing his left hand. So I'm going to select the point draw tool, and it's just kind of pick a spot, any spot. So I'm going to start here at the end of his, where his mouth would be, his hand is tucking under it. And I put a round point. That's wrong. I want a square point. So I'm holding my shift key and clicking. Now I have a square point. So shift and click, shift and click. This one wasn't quite where I wanted it. I can cursor over it. And when I see the cursor change from the point to the little X sign, which I call the move symbol, I can move those around. I was holding my shift key down, so it changed it to a round circle. And then you work your way around. Now there is a little bit of a practice factor in this. So as you learn to design with the point tools, it's just like digitizing. And if you've done some digitizing, drawing with the draw tools is just like digitizing. So I'm going to come in here a little ways and put a square point and just kind of work my way back and forth. But I want those to be pretty close and almost overlap each other because that will make it, when it forms the stitches in Express Design, that will give it a better overlap of those areas so that you don't get gapping. And I'm just working my way around. And yes, this is just like watching paint dry. So here we go. And I want this to be closed. So I'm going to overlap my cursor with the first point I made till I see the tiny little X, which means join. And I'm going to click. And now I have drawn my first object. Now, a couple of things that almost everybody who's new at this, and some of us who are very experienced but in a hurry, forget is, at this point in time, if I wanted to change the color of his hand, all I have to do is come in here and select a different color. Or if I wanted to change the line width, all I have to do is come in here and select a different line width, a different line color. See how easy that is? So while any object is selected, and I can tell it's selected because the path in the film strip is highlighted, I can change that. But if I want to set up a new line color, width, or fill color for the next hand, I have to finish the tool. So I right click and finish point draw. It automatically box select it. So I have to click outside that to deselect it. And now when I change my fill color for the right hand, and I'll use kind of a hot pink for that, it won't change something else that was selected by accident. That will happen to you. Don't fret about it. Go back and watch this video again to see why it happened. And just know that it happens to all of us. So now I'm just going to turn the draw tool, point draw, back on again. I'm going to make square point here, square point there. I'm going to work my way out and around these curves. And another thing to be aware of is when you draw in Draw and Paint, you have to draw within the canvas area. So if you try and draw outside the canvas area, like you went out here and tried to place a point, the point might appear, but when you go to save this or export this, anything that hangs outside the canvas is not going to be part of your image. So everything you design has to be within the grid of the canvas. Now I'm going to put a couple of round points in here just to help shape that curvature of his body. Then I'm going to cursor over my first point again and click. And now I have his right hand. Pretty cool. Now remember, you have to right click and finish point draw and then click off the object to deselect it. And then you can come in here and add a new color. And the next thing I'm going to design is his body. So I'm going to choose orange because he's kind of corals and oranges. Now, another little tip, because I've seen people over and over and over again in classes, they come in and they have this logo and it's a dentist's office or it's their friend's ranch or it's whatever. And they want to take it through the Express Design Wizard and they show me, or assistant, and they show me what they've stitched out. And it looks like my guy did at the beginning. It's blobby, it's ragged at the edges, there's gaps, there's spaces, things go in every which direction, and it's not satisfactory. So that's perfect for bringing that in and redrawing it. But a lot of logos have a lot of shading. They have a lot of little teeny tiny details that in print, those look really, really nice. But when you go to put them in embroidery stitches, something that is 1/8 of an inch by 1/16 of an inch as a little bit of shading in the corner of something is not going to stitch well. So the other thing you think about when you're designing artwork for embroidery is how much detail do I really need to suggest what my final embroidery should say? And what I mean by that is, do I need all these shades inside this guy to make a really cute cartoon style embroidery design? If you wanted the shading, there's a better way to do it if you have the digitizing software, and that is with a multicolor gradient fill. So you always are consciously thinking when you're redrawing these, do I really need to put a little bitty black dot here, or can I just make a black circle and then put a white circle over the top of it? And another little tip is that when you work in Draw and Paint and you layer these things one over the other, there is the capability of making holes, but you don't have to do that, because when you run this through Express Design is going to punch those holes out for you. So the whole process, designing artwork in our software and then running it through the Express Design in our software, the code that operates that whole system has been designed to facilitate your successfulness when you start with a really clean piece of artwork. So once again, it's pick a point, any point. I'm going to turn on my point draw tool. And I'm just going to start at a corner just because that's the way my mind works. There's not really any other reason. Shift to get square. And I'm just going to kind of almost overlap those.
Janie, while you're doing that, can I ask a couple questions?
You may, my dear.
So the first one, someone wants to know, where is that blue border coming from around the image? Why is there a blue border?
Oh, because I can answer that one in a second. I got to finish this tool before. Whoops. And I went the wrong way. See, I'm not
sorry.
That's okay. No, it's not your fault. It's the way my brain works. So I want to come out and around like this. So that blue border is actually when we inserted the paint image, which was a bitmap, right? It's a pixelated image like Paint uses. When we inserted it, it had a white background, and the white background, when I adjusted the size of it, I didn't make it fill the whole canvas area. So that blue border you see around the outside edge in the Paint tab would be unused space in the canvas.
Okay. And then we have someone who asked, when does the line size change from a running stitch versus a satin stitch? Like, how would you know if you're going to get a running stitch if you choose 0.5 versus a satin stitch?
Okay, and that's an excellent question. And I cannot give you a hard and fast answer on that because part of it depends on how large or small you make your embroidery, because that's the way Express Design works. So with Express Design, when it looks at the image and the image size might be, say, 3 inches tall, and you tell it you want an embroidery that's 7 inches tall, it's going to make a wider stitch because it's amplifying the picture. It's blowing the picture up bigger. So that's just something to do with how Express Design works. You can kind of minimize that, especially if you have silver or gold and you're not going to be opening it in the digitizing program. You can minimize that a little bit by adjusting the size of your picture to be close to the target size of the embroidery you want to make. And then the narrower lines will make running stitch. I did find I was making this the size of the 260 by 200 hoop. And I did find that that 0.5 millimeter was about the breaking point for getting a really good running stitch line. And tomorrow when I show you things about Express Design in the Facebook Live, I will cover some of that information as well.
I have a couple of other questions here. People have good questions today.
Good.
Somebody wants to know, when you're creating this and you are going from one hand and then you're going over to the other hand, is that creating jump stitches?
No, you're not working with stitches here. This is an art program. Now look, I'm cursoring over the ends so I can join those, and I'm going to click, and now I have my orange fill. No, because this program is not a digitizing program. Well, it is. It's picture digitizing. So what I'm actually doing here is just drawing a picture, and there are no stitches involved, and there won't be any stitches involved until you take this in and run it through Express Design.
And then one more, somebody wants to know, how do they know if they have gradient options in their fill?
Once again, gradient is only going to be in the digitizing software, mySewnet digitizing. And in mySewnet digitizing, you can turn on gradient fill when you do a fill pattern, and then you can set those gradients in the digitizing fill. And if you go into digitizing and open it, and then go to the help system and look up gradient, it will give you information about how to change something to a gradient.
So that's in the platinum version.
In the platinum version, yes.
Okay, that's all the questions I see for now. Thanks, Janie.
Okay, so now I've made his body, and a couple of things that I think I may end up wanting to change in this image. I don't want his hand to overcut the body. Here, I wanted to shape it like this because that's where his mouth cuts in. So I am going to right click and finish this point draw. And I'm going to click outside to deselect it. And then I'm going to come over here and select this path. And I'm going to go down and use point editing. So I'm deviating a little from what I had scripted for you guys, but it works out well here to do this. So I'm going to use point edit. And you can see how while I was talking, I wasn't paying attention. And I put slider and zoom up on this so you can see it more closely. I put some points in here I really don't want. So I want to move, just click and drag to move these two round points, and I don't need these 2 points at all. So we have some extra point editing tools here. We have insert points. So if I needed an extra point, I could put it in. But remember, that stays on until you turn it off with a right click or you choose a different tool. I can delete points. So when I choose delete points, insert points goes off, and then I can click on these extra points and delete them. And now I want to move this one, but oops, I have my delete points still on. I have to remember to come back to the edit points tool to select it. And now this will tend to lay over the edge of the hand, and I'm going to control and click and make that one curved because I'll get a better shaping. And do you see how when you start moving these, it is just like when we move things in the digitizing. If you've done digitizing, the curvature changes. So the closer the points are, that sharper that outline or the border area that defines the shaping. See how it bubbles out because the curvature is getting really sharp. And here, when I stretch it about evenly between two adjacent points, it's smoother and the curvature is more the same on both sides. So just little tips as you start playing with this. Now, I want to put in an eye, but I can't see the artwork. I can't see the eye. And if I were making stitches, I would have different techniques for how to handle this, but I'm working with artwork here. So I'm going to make sure the path for my body is selected. And I am simply going to come over here and turn the fill off temporarily. And then I'm going to click outside. Let's see, I'll have to right click and finish edit points and then click outside to deselect it. And now I can set up my line, color and size, and the fill for the eye. So I want my eye to have a white eyeball. And I can come in here with my point draw tool and define where I want his eyeball to be. And when I drew, and I'm not going to show it to you till tomorrow, but I will show you tomorrow what this looks like with the one that I've drawn. When I drew it and I joined it, I purposely left some space in here so that I would get a little orange color between the eyeball and the outer edge when I have a running stitch, a skinny line, or when I went back and changed it to a fatter line and got satin stitches, it wouldn't overlap into the eyeball so much. So there's little tricks that you learn as you go along to do. So now my white eye, I can't see where I want to put his pupil for the eye. So once again, I'm going to turn the white fill off. I'm going to right click to release point draw. I'm going to click outside to deselect, and I'll make a black line with a black fill, and I'm going to use point draw, and I'm going to make his little eyeball. And you can put that as close or as far away as you want. This is your artwork. You get to choose how you want things to be. So I'm going to right click and finish point draw again, and then I'm going to click to deselect it. And now, Houston, we have a problem because the body, if you're looking at the film strip, the body and the white part of the eyeball don't have any color, but that's very easy to fix. I'm going to select the path in the film strip, come back over here and reselect my orange color or any other color I want to use. And I'm going to do the same with the pathway for the eyeball. I'm just going to reselect the white color. And now I have my little guy and he's all drawn. Now at this point, I usually go around my artwork and zoom in closer. And I select the piece I want to edit and then go to the editing points tools. And I make my adjustments so that things overlap the way I want them to. So I'm going to make this one shift and click to a square. And it's just shaping and how close those stitches will overlap so I don't get gapping when I run it through Express Design. Because Express Design is only as good as the artwork we make for it. And that's really something that as you work with this, the time it takes to fine tune and adjust your drawing before you save it and take it through Express Design will affect the outcome of the quality of your stitches at the end of the day. And that's just something you learn by, I need another point in that line. Do you see that? So I'm going to use insert point and put it on that one. And I'm going to make it square. Oops, go back to edit points and make him square with a shift and a click. And see how now I can overlap those. Now my purpose in doing that was, I want to smooth that out a little bit here. So I'm just adjusting these points and fine tuning their placement a bit, is because I don't want a gap in my fills, but I want to bring that black line down into the body to get that detail. And there's multiple ways I could have done it. I could have just gone all the way around the outside, and then I could have made another black line that just kind of laid in there where I wanted it to be. So those are the kind of things that as you start learning to do this, I want you to play with your images and then play with running them through Express Design. Now, for years, I have taught people to use Express Design on things that are very clean artwork like this. And by clean, I mean clearly defined. Line and fill are very distinct. And this type of digitizing, because Express Design is digitizing, it's often faster and easier to take this type of art through the Express Design rather than manually punching it yourself. Now, people who love to digitize, they're going to manually punch everything, and that's great. They've got the skills, they've got the patience, they enjoy that process. Some of you do not. Some of you have silver or gold levels of software, and Express Design is what you have and what you will use. So that's why I think it's really good now that you have access to Draw and Paint at the silver and gold level, is to learn to use the Draw and Paint, and then you will be much more successful with all your artwork going through Express Design. Now, one more thing I wanted to do, I'm going to go back to the path for the body, turn off the fill. I want to just, for fun and funky, I'm going to right click and finish edit points and deselect, make a kind of light orangey inner ear. So I'm going to use the draw tool. And I'm going to suggest the shaping of an inner ear. And as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be fun to go back and take this line and make it pointed? Because you could make him into a pixie or an elf. So once you have your basic artwork done, you can do right click, finish point, draw, anything that you want to do that you can imagine, because you have the tools. The tools are there. Once you master them, they're very easy to use. So now I have him pretty much the way I want him to be. And I want to show you something. I am going to select all, and I'm in the Draw tab, and each one of these pieces of my artwork is an object. So when I'm in the Draw tab and each piece is an object, I can make this taller, I can make it thinner, I can make it bigger, I can change the canvas size and adjust him to be 10 inches tall if I want, because the sky is the limit when you're working with what we call vector graphics or Draw tab graphics. Lines, fills, that's all everything is. So I'm going to control and shift, and I'm going to bring him down a little bit. I wanted to show you that the paint image is still there. So if I go to paint, I can see that paint image is still there. If I go to draw, and I save this right now as an ECQ file type, which is the most optimal vector graphic type to run through your Express Design wizard, at least in my opinion, some of you may disagree, is it will save the vector graphic, but it will embed the paint image in it as well. And when you run it through the Express Design wizard, you're going to get stray stitches around the outside edge because the part of the paint image that's showing is fuzzy. So to avoid that, I'm going to control and shift and make him bigger again. All you have to do is go to paint, select it all with Control A, and delete it. And now that background reference we made is no longer there. Now, if you thought you might want that background image again, what you can do is save it once as crazy guy with background paint, and then delete the paint image and save it a second time as crazy guy without background paint image. And that way you still have both versions available. But you want this to be just what's in the Draw tab without the paint image in it. Now, and that is for saving when we go to Save or Save As, and we save this as that Draw and Paint working file type, which is an ECQ. So that is our default file type. That is a vector image. It is only for our system, but it is optimized to run through that Express Design perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and save him, and I'm going to call him Crazy, C-R-A-Z-Y, guy, no paint image. And that just tells me that I've created this ECQ vector graphic and I've removed any drawing I had in the background as a paint image, so I don't have to worry about stray stitches popping up from him. So I'm going to save this. Now, while we're talking about images, Save As is always going to be ECQ. There is no other type. And Export Picture is another option. So when we go into File, you'll see that there is an Export Picture option. And this can get fairly complex to understand in the sense that we only have 3 types here to export as. One of them is an SVG, which is a scalable vector graphic image. Those will work in Express Design as well. And that file type, that SVG, is also the one that I mentioned earlier. If you're using the crafting software, the mySewnet crafting software for Memento, the SVG images will allow you to send them to a designing process for cut files, which PNG and JPEGs, you have to do a lot of extra work to get them there. So SVG is a good file type if you're using that software as well. And I want to let you all know that in roughly a month, Meredith is going to do a 3-day workshop on that too. And we'll give you more details on our 3rd day. So SVG is another option. It's a scalable vector graphic. You don't really need it to work in our Express Design, but you might want it for other software things that you might be doing. PNG is a portable network graphic, and that is a much higher resolution paint type file. It will run through Express Design, but it does not give as precise as stitches, and you will have to do a lot more changes in the settings, filter out extra thread colors, stray colors that it tends to throw in, and the JPEG is the same. So even though this has the capability of exporting as a PNG and a JPEG, the only time I really use those is if I'm doing some desktop publishing and what I'm working with doesn't like the vector graphic as well as it does the paint type images. So that would be your 3 options for exporting a picture. And exporting a picture simply takes the ECQ file and changes its file type. It extrapolates it. So it is an SVG, a PNG, or a JPEG type image. So if I choose SVG, and you can see here that in my folder, I put some different things that I was working with because I always go through and do lots of testing. So I've got Crazy Guy, no paint image, and this one will be an SVG.
Janie, can I ask you a question now?
Yes, ma'am.
So somebody has asked, you started with the hands and then you went to the body and then you did the eyes and you had to hide the fills. Could you start with those eyes and the small things on top and then just move them down in the film strip after you were finished?
Absolutely. I am guilty of sequencing things like a digitizer because I've been digitizing for over 30 years. So I look at it in layers, but yes, if you didn't want to have to hide the fill in the body, you could have done the black eyeball first and then put the white one in and then put the orange body. And then in the film strip, you can select any piece and you can move them up or down in the film strip to change their order. So yes, absolutely, it could be done that way. There's no right or wrong way to do any of these things. Honestly, it's just a matter of you got to learn the tools and then you got to play around. So I'm glad they mentioned that.
And then somebody also wanted to know if you export an SVG, does
Yes.
it also retain the JPEG if it's not deleted?
Yes, I believe it
Excellent.
does.
Those are the only
When,
questions that I see.
yep. When you export as SVG, it will, if you've left paint picture in the paint tab, when you export that as the SVG, let me go here and show you where that setting is. And I choose SVG. You can tell it to include the paint image, or you can uncheck that and it will save only the vector portion. If that makes sense. I always delete them because if you accidentally forget and then you take that image and run it through your Express Design, you're going to see those stray colors and things and you'll wonder why. So that's my reason for doing that technique. But it does give you the option to check to save the paint with it or remove the paint. SVGs are kind of interesting things. SVG files can hold, they're like a container is how it's been explained to me, and they can hold other data. So sometimes people purchase an SVG format to run through a digitizing program and it won't open. And it's because that SVG probably has a Word document or some other type of data saved within it, just like this would have saved the paint if I told it to. And our software can't read that part, so it says the image is corrupt or it won't run it. So just a little bit of trivia there. Now I have a couple more things and we're getting down close to the end. So I'm going to show you if I select everything. So I can do that several different ways. I can click the first path item, shift and click the last one, or I can shift the first one, hold control and select whichever ones I want after that. Or I can do Control A on the keyboard or it's Command A on the Mac. And I want to change my outlines to 2.5. Let's do 2 millimeters. Now I have a fatter outline and I can save this using Save As a new file. And I can then run each one through Express Design and I can get one embroidery that has running line outlines and another embroidery that has satin line outlines. And it's not a precise science. I can't tell you that a 2 millimeter is going to make a 2 millimeter satin stitch because I don't know how large or small you're going to make your embroidery. It's relative to the size of the picture and the finished size of the embroidery, how that Express Design adjusts the width of the stitches, but you can play with it, right? You can make it 2 millimeters, run it through Express Design. Takes you what, a minute and a half? And then you can make it 3 millimeters and run it through Express Design. So you silver and gold owners now have a lot more potential for being able to design embroideries because you can use drawn paint. Now, I want to take, is it okay if I take like 2 minutes to show them one more thing?
Of course, absolutely.
All right. So what I'm going to do now, and I would resave this as a new file name. You can go through here and edit anything you want using these tools. Point select, add points, delete points, adjusting colors. The sky is the limit at this point for what you can do. So I'm going to go back up here and go to a new window to just open another window. And give this a second to get opened up. And I promised you that I would show you a little bit about multiply. So I am going to start by inserting a shape. and I want to use shape 74 just because it's a petal shape. And whatever line and line width and color I have set is what it's going to make my petals in. So let's make it pink and a pale pink and make this a 1 millimeter line. And that would just be your choice, whatever you wanted to do. And I'm going to insert this shape, and you're going to adjust the size to about what you think you want your petal to be. And then you need to mirror this one, because when we go to multiply, it's going to put the control petal at the top center. So I want my petal to be pointing towards the center. Then I'm going to enable multiply, and I'm going to multiply this to a circle. And you can see already it's showing me 4 petals because 4 repeats was default. But as I move this preview, you can see how I can adjust how this is going to repeat. I can make it 5 petals. I can make it 6 petals. I could mirror these petals horizontally, vertically, or tile them as well. So this would be great if you, again, if you were working with Memento and you wanted to make a tile and save this as an SVG, you would be ready to bring into your crafting software and work with from there. But I'm going to make a circle just because this is kind of fun to do. And I'm going to adjust these so they barely touch each other. And now I've made a little starburst flower. So all I have to do is apply multiply, and I've now created a new image using the multiply settings. And that's really about the only thing that we haven't touched on in Draw and Paint today. So that gives you a pretty good overview of everything. So other questions that I didn't actually touch on, Amy?
I see somebody has asked, and I'm not sure what this was referencing. How do you fix a graphic to open in crafting? If you run it through Paint and Draw, will it fix? I think that she's referring to the JPEG if you don't delete it from that previous question.
So
if I'm wrong here.
Yep. I'm actually going to defer that question to ask you guys to watch Meredith's presentation in a month, because I think she's going to go into more of that kind of thing. I will just say that in the crafting software, when you first bring an image in, it pops up with a menu. And if it's a JPEG or a paint type image, those will not offer as many choices as if it's a vector graphic. And if it's a vector graphic, in other words, an SVG or an ECQ, well, you can't open ECQ, so you would have to save the SVG. Then it's going to automatically offer you the option to make those objects, individual objects to cut. So
let me ask that question again. She said, read it exactly as she wrote it. She said, I'm running into that now. How do you fix a graphic to open in crafting? If you run it through Paint and Draw, will that fix it? Will it correct an SVG that has embedded things? Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, and I honestly would have to look at it to be able to tell you. You should be able to open it in the Draw tab if it's an SVG and manipulate it, but that would be a case-by-case basis, I think. Don't you think so, Meredith?
Meredith's not on right now.
Oh, she's not on right now. Yeah. So I would say, I know she's going to do a much more in-depth for the Memento and the crafting software. I just wanted to mention to you guys that you can use this program for it, and it does an excellent job, and it's now in the silver level. So that makes it very exciting for me as an educator to see that happen. Okay. Any other quick questions?
I think we've got everything.
Okay. So, I'm looking. I see the question now. I'm looking over it at the notes. She wants to know if it will correct embedded things. And the answer to that would be yes, if you open it up in the Draw tab and then simply resave it as, I would probably resave it as the ECQ file type. And then I would go to Export Picture and save it as the SVG and uncheck Paint Background. It should correct it. So you could give it a try and see. All right, so I've run 5 minutes over my time today, but I'm very excited to have all of you attend. Tomorrow at same time, same place, we're going to go through Express Design and talk about what some of the options and things are that you can do when you have beautiful, clean graphics to work with, which you now have some ideas to get you started there. So come back tomorrow and join us to see how we use art in the Express Design tool.